In Russia, local authorities are beginning to cancel May the 9th parades due to fears of strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine. The Moscow Times reported on this. According to the governor of Krasnodar Krai, Veniamin Kondratyev, this year's parade will not be held in Krasnodar for security reasons. According to him, the decision is related to the high risk of air attacks by the Ukrainian Armed Forces. There will be no parade in Krasnodar because the parade will take place in Novorossiysk. It's simply too risky. Air raid alerts are issued almost every night, Kondratyev said. He added that the decision was made jointly with law enforcement agencies and the representatives of the army of the aggressor state. It's worth noting that military and industrial facilities in Novorossiysk itself, a city located on the Black Sea coast, have been repeatedly targeted by Ukrainian aerial and naval drones. The publication notes that the cancellation of May the 9th celebrations in Russia this year is not unique. In 2024, parades were cancelled in 1 out of every 4 regions of the aggressor country. Such decisions have primarily been made in regions that have been regularly attacked by Ukrainian drones. Among these regions are the Lipetsk, Belgorod, Kursk and Bryansk regions. In Moscow itself, the parade took place last year, but in a reduced format. Russian territory began to be shelled by the armed forces of Ukraine after the start of the full-scale war launched by Vladimir Putin in February 2022. Prior to the beginning of the large-scale combat operations, there were no attacks from Ukraine on Russian territory, the Moscow Times emphasized. Recently, independent news channel Astra reported that a Ukrainian long-range drone strike had targeted Bucha, sharing purported footage of a drone being shot down. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed that Russian air defenses shot down one Ukrainian airplane-type drone in Tatarstan without providing further details or mentioning Bucha. The strike, carried out by Ukraine's unmanned systems forces in coordination with other branches of the military, targeted a plant in the Bucha Special Economic Zone of Russia's Republic of Tatarstan, the General Staff said. The facility that was hit manufactures up to 300 Iranian-style Shahed drones and their Russian-made variants, Gerans, per day, according to the General Staff. Shahed-style drones are frequently used by Russia in attacks on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. The attack is among Ukraine's deepest strikes into Russian territory since the full-scale invasion began in 2022. Ukraine hit targets over 1,000 kilometers last year for the first time, with one attack occurring 1,800 kilometers from the border in Russia's Murmansk Oblast. The Russian authorities are afraid to carry out a new mobilization because they perceive veterans of the war against Ukraine as a threat. The invader military Z blogger Svyatoslav Golikov said this in an interview with the Russian TV channel Stalingrad, responding to the host's words that Russian soldiers return from the war against Ukraine completely different. They have seen a lot and are not afraid of many things. It seems that the state views these people as a factor of internal political risk. For some reason, veterans are seen as a threat. This is so at odds with the words that SVO veterans are the pride of the country. As is known, Golikov systematically spreads military propaganda and calls for escalation of the war against Ukraine. His Telegram channel has more than 62,000 subscribers. The invader dreams of capturing Odessa and liquidating Ukraine. Let us recall that a number of pro-war Telegram channels accuse the Russian authorities of weakness, indecisiveness, and betrayal of the national interests of the country. The so-called war correspondents and ultra-nationalists are outraged that the highest levels of power are allegedly ready for a freeze of the war or secret negotiations while they demand fighting to the end. Russian President Vladimir Putin fears the end of the war due to the domestic political situation in the aggressor state, where roughly a third of society seeks the total annihilation of Ukraine. Ukrainian political scientist Vadim Denisenko says that 30 to 35% of Russian hurrah patriots want the war to persist until Ukraine is completely destroyed, with some of them forming the backbone and support base of Putin's electorate, while others are anti-Putin in their stance. The end of the war in the spring of 2025 could lead to quiet or silent resistance within the Russian Federation. And the Kremlin bloc responsible for domestic policy does not understand how to return the country to a peaceful course at this point, or what to do with these people, the expert noted. Due to fear of his proactive minority, Denisenko believes the Kremlin has decided that the war must continue. For Putin, it's typical to delay making a decision when he doesn't know what to do, postponing it for an indefinite period. In this case, at least until the end of the year, the political scientist suggested. In addition, according to Vadim Denisenko, a group of hawks, advocates for continuing the war, has formed around Putin. These people have significant influence over Putin and reinforce his belief that a summer counter-offensive must be pursued, he noted.
The son of the deputy head of the CIA died in Ukraine as a soldier of the Russian Armed Forces. He believed Putin's speeches and signed a contract with the Russian Defense Ministry, according to investigation by Important Stories. A thin young man with long hair gathered in a careless bun. On his finger is a tattoo of a peace sign, a symbol of peace and the anti-war movement. This is 21-year-old Michael Gloss, the son of the current deputy director of the CIA for digital innovation Julian Galina Gloss and Iraq veteran Larry Gloss, who now creates secure software for the US Army and NATO countries. But he was not at all like his parents. Michael attended the greenest college in the US, protested against the ban on abortions and defended the climate. In 2023, he decided to become a hippie wanderer, dropped out of school and went on a trip around the world. He posted photos with the hashtag #EndUkraine on social networks, joined the anti-war hippie movement Rainbow Family, went to an eco-activist camp and cleared the rubble after earthquakes in Turkey. As an acquaintance of Gloss recalls, over time, Michael began to call himself Hamza, became a supporter of Palestine, began watching conspiracy videos and started talking about the ideas of a multipolar world and war against the hegemony of the West. In Istanbul, Gloss got a Russian visa and went on another trip, from the south of Russia to Moscow. On the way, he acquired a USSR flag, created a VK account, subscribed to groups about Lenin, Stalin and communism and posted videos with Putin. But the American's visa was expiring, and then he found himself at a recruitment point for contract service on Yablokova Street in Moscow, and then at war in Ukraine. Important Stories talked to friends from different periods of Michael Gloss's life and his fellow airborne servicemen and reconstructed the picture of the last years of his life.